Are you looking for affordable land? Today I'm going to show you over 50 affordable properties, many of which come with owner financing, and how to use a secret free resource to learn a ton of information on your property. So here's the schedule for today. I'm going to go over some property updates, so what we have coming up, the deal of the day, and then how to find secret, well, technically not secret, but little known data on your land. And we'll wrap up with a fact of the day and a free gift. All right, so for anyone who is new here, my name is Erica. I have a company, Gokce Capital, that buys and sells land. I'm not a broker. I sell only properties that my company owns. And you can find all of our properties by clicking Buy Land or by going to land.gocap.com. We do have properties throughout the U.S. Right now, most of our properties are in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, New Mexico, Colorado, and New York. And we have been listing a number of properties recently. So we have a table here that shows you a little more information on each property. We just brought to market 3 new properties in Vance County, North Carolina. These are all adjacent. Why is it secret? Well, okay, technically not secret. This is a public resource. It's just most people don't know about it. So, secret. I'm being a little cute, I suppose. But so we did just bring 3 properties in Vance County to market. These are all adjacent, so we're selling them separately, but they could also be all purchased together to buy an even bigger lot. And before that, we did recently bring to market a property in Bertie County, North Carolina, and another property in Vance County, North Carolina, as well as a property in Valencia and Socorro County, New Mexico. And we're going to have more properties coming up very soon. There should be some more properties in Castilla County because that had been previously one of our most viewed lots. Now it's our South Carolina properties that are our most viewed. So we should have more Castilla County properties soon. And we should be releasing our free land giveaway very soon. If not by the end of the day today, then tomorrow. So be on the lookout on YouTube for that. And I'll announce it here as well once it is officially live. Okay, so for the deal of the day today, I'm going to go over our Bertie County property. This is just under half an acre. And it is, well, let's zoom out so we can see first where Bertie County is. So this is still eastern North Carolina. It is off of the Albemarle Sound, well, a little to the north of the Albemarle Sound, just to the north of the small town of Windsor. So this is a more rural area. You get a kind of more peaceful rural North Carolina, but there are a number of homes here, and you're pretty close to towns for amenities. It is currently wooded, so there are mature trees on the property, and there's no zoning out here and no HOA. So this is a, for the most part, unrestricted lot, and I know many people are interested in that. So according to our research, that would mean that RVs are allowed for recreational use, not for full-time, long-term living, but RVs are allowed here, although I would confirm all of this with the county yourself. All right, and we should have nice drone footage of this lot soon. We have an ad out for that, but it is currently priced at $13,993 plus the $595 doc fee, and as with all of the properties that we have listed for sale by owner, this one does come with owner financing. And we will tailor those terms to meet your budget. So we don't have a set down payment or monthly payment. Just let us know what works for you, and we will come up with a proposal that should allow this property to be affordable for you. And if you are interested in the lot or any of our lots, we do have a hold option. So for $50, you can hold the property for 2 days. That'll take it off market. No one can purchase it while you do your research. And you can have a hold for up to 8 days. So it's $50 for every 2 days. That hold fee will be credited toward the purchase price if you move forward with the purchase within 30 days. And you can actually transfer the hold fee as well. So if you do your research and then decide a different property actually works better, you can still apply the hold fee to the other property as long as you purchase it within 30 days. So we're trying to make sure that you find the property that really works for you. And this gives you time to do your due diligence, and it allows you to move forward with the right fit. Okay, so that is our property today. Now, I'm not sure if Raphael and Judith are here, but yesterday we had started talking about leasing land to farmers or leasing agricultural land. And we were looking at a public resource. So, Abby, you're correct. It's technically not secret, but I don't think most people know about this, which is kind of a shame because this is one of the most powerful resources out there for land owners, at least online resources. And it is free. It's a government database. So there's a lot of information you can find out about the property here. And I pulled it up to show a few aspects of this yesterday. And there was some talk about wanting to go a little bit deeper into this resource. And Avi was asking if anyone's familiar with Land ID, where does the soil CAP score in Land ID come from, and how you could find it on this resource, which is free. Land ID is paid. This is free. So I'm going to go through a number of different features in this resource and also show you how you can, if you are using Land ID, how you can find the CAP score here without requiring a subscription. Okay, so what is this? This is the Web Soil Survey. It's released by the USDA. USDA is federal agency, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it is a compilation of a bunch of data that the USDA collects, mainly about soil throughout the entire United States. I don't think everyone understands why CAP score is important and what it is. Okay, so let me back up a minute. Yeah, CAP score. The soil CAP score on Land ID, I guess I should open Land ID. Although I need to log in. So the CAP score is a score oops. We don't need to see Land ID. Okay. Well, it's just basically, it's a score that's telling you how good the soil is, and we internally use it to do an initial kind of estimate on whether we think the property would be able to support a PERC or a septic system, like whether it's going to pass a PERC test. And I will show you that data here on this map. Now, this is the USDA soil survey. As I was saying, it's a compilation of a bunch of different data sources from the federal government. And you can look up a property here. So let us look up this property. So I'm going to pull up the nearby address. And then to look up your property, so you put in the address or a nearby address if the lot doesn't have an address, and then you click Area of Interest or AOI here to gather data on the area. So then we can go to the soil map, And that shows us what kinds of soils are on the property and in the nearby area. But that's just the beginning, because there's a lot of other information that can be pulled once you know the soil type in the area. So let's go to Soil Data Explorer. Now, a couple things that would be useful for people who either own land or are looking to buy land. There are a couple different reasons why this data might be useful. So one, if you're looking to build, you can get some basic information on whether you're going to need like an engineered foundation. If there isn't public sewer in the area, you can get some basic information to try and determine how likely it is a perk test will pass. And then if you're going to be growing crops or using the land for agriculture, there's a lot of great information that helps you determine how suitable the soil might be for agriculture. Why not just select the lot instead of, it doesn't have the individual lots. You just draw an outline over the area. So you see it doesn't have the parcel outlines. Unless I'm missing that layer. I don't know if you looked into this. Maybe I'm missing something there, but let me know. Okay, so you can see that there's one category here, building site development, that gives you some information that might be helpful for determining whether it'll be relatively easy to put a foundation on the property. So you can look at a rating for dwellings with basements. Just click View Rating. And it'll tell you how limited it might be to put a basement in. You can also get a sense of the slope by going to Soil Properties and Qualities and Representative Slope. And that's also really helpful for both construction and agriculture to see how flat or relatively flat the property is. Oh, why did I select such a large outline? Just so we have a wider range of soils. So you might be able to see different ratings as I go through these. But yeah, I mean, if you really just wanted to see one particular parcel, you could zoom in more and do a smaller area of interest. Okay. You can also find the depth to bedrock, which is again helpful for pretty much any use you might have for the property. Bedrock that's very close to the surface could be problematic both for agriculture and then certainly for construction and even potentially for septic systems. So here we see the bedrock is pretty far down. So that's a good thing on this property. Now for septic systems, you want me to go to the CAP score? Okay, we'll do the CAP score then. So you would go to suitabilities and limitations for use, and then land classification, non-irrigated capability class. So non-irrigated, this would be agriculture without irrigation, supplemental irrigation. What's the capacity of the soil to support non-irrigated crops, essentially. All right, so they give you ratings here. And what does that mean? So it's actually a class rating from 1 to 8, 1 being soil with the fewest limitations. It's deep, nearly level, very productive soil that's like prime farm soil. That's a very long foreshadow. Yeah, I was gonna do it last, but you're anxious, so we'll do it now. Then you get down to, you see we have some class 2 soils here. These are still good soils. They only have moderate limitations, may need some conservation practices, but in general, they're still pretty good soils. Class 3 is the next grade down. There's some reduced choice for crops, but still good for agriculture, probably very good for pasture, just a little bit riskier than class 1 and 2. 4, you're getting into more limitations. You might only occasionally be able to grow crops without special management. You might have to get into more. So non-irrigated, right. So this is the CAP score here. That's the rating. And it's telling you on a score of 1 to 8 how good the soils are. It's primarily for agriculture, but it can align with a septic as well. So, we've heard in North Carolina that there's pretty big overlap. 1, 2, 3 are very good for septic systems. And then 4 onward, as you get further down, it's more and more risky. So yeah, class 5 is not good for crops, but maybe good for pasture. Class 6, generally not suited for cultivation, but still could be used for pasture. And then you get all the way down to class 8, which is essentially non-arable. Their soils, water areas limited to recreation, wildlife, and natural areas. Right, so that's the CAP score here. And it's coming from the non-irrigated capability class. I note that because there's also irrigated capability class, which is looking at the capability of the soil if you have irrigation in place, but not every area has this rating. You see, I can't see it for this property. So does this site explain the classes? So they do have, here you can see if you scroll down, they have a description. They tell you what all of the classes are and how they relate to cultivation. So again, this is primarily for agriculture, and you can see in the rating system there. You can also look, if you're interested in agriculture, they have a farmland classification as well, which just kind of straight up tells you if it's prime farmland or not, right? So you see these ratings, these are much more descriptive and intuitive. Right, prime farmland if drained, farmland of statewide importance, right? So that's another useful rating if you're looking at the land for growing crops. And I'll also note that they do have, for those who are interested in growing crops, vegetative productivity measures. So you can look at an estimate of potential non-irrigated crop yield. Where is it? Yeah. Yields of non-irrigated crops. And you can select, depending on the area, they'll have different crops you can select, and you can get an estimate. This would be an annual per acre estimate of how much you can grow on that soil. You want to ask Mr. ChatGPT? So you want to know how this relates to soil per. So what does Mr. ChatGPT say? So the non-irrigated capability class is designed for agriculture, tells you how many limitations the soil has for growing crops. Lower classes, so 1 to 3, are good farm soils. Higher classes, 4 to 8, are more limited. And the limitations can be due to erosion risk, wetness, shallow soil, or climate. And if you're talking about a septic system, what you're looking at is how well the soil drains water. That's essentially what a percolation, so the percolation test is the test that's going to determine whether you can put in a septic, and it's measuring how fast water moves through soil. So there is a direct link from some subclasses. So like a wet soil is obviously going to be a red flag for septic. But there's also an indirect link between the agricultural classes and how well they'll work for a septic system. So class 1 to 3 soils, which are good for farming, often are loamy, sandy loamy soils that have moderate textures. So those soils, they're primarily flagged as being good for agriculture, but they tend to also be good for septic systems. They're a little more well drained. The later classes, so like class 6 to 8, generally have issues like they're too wet, too shallow, too rocky, and those same issues often make perk tests fail. So that's why there is some overlap between good farm class soils, so class 1 to 3, and good potential perk soils. So I think that's why we were told to look at the CAP score as just a general, so it's not a substitute for a perk test, but it can give you a baseline estimate for how likely it is that the soil is going to pass a perk test. And yeah, the class 1 to 3 soils, even though this is primarily measuring farmland, the class 1 to 3 soils, which are great farmland soils, also tend to be good perk soils, good septic soils. Does that answer the question? Because we can keep doing some research on that if you'd like. But since we're talking about septics, there are actually some other data layers in here which might be useful. So for example, you have, if we go to sanitary facilities, what would looking at the soil name and type and just ask if it's good for septic? Wouldn't that be better? Yeah. I mean, but you would have to, yeah, I mean, it might just be better to go here, get the soil name, put it into Mr. ChatGPT and see what Mr. ChatGPT thinks. It's a good point. I mean, it's always better to have multiple data sources, so why not do both? Look at both the CAP score and ask Mr. ChatGPT what he, she, it thinks of the soil type and whether it's likely to pass a perk. But of course, I have to say again, none of this is a substitute for actually doing a perk test. Can we do a test? Yeah, we can. So let's go back to the soil map. This is primarily Goldsboro sandy loam. So let's see what Mr. GPT, Ms. GPT, Monsieur GPT says. Would this soil be good for a septic system? Could it pass a perk? It might be conflicting. Let's see. Thinking. It's thinking. You gave it a hard question. So in the meantime, I do want to show you one other thing here. So if we go back to the Soil Data Explorer and the suitabilities and limitations of use, they actually have a sanitary facilities series of data points. You can look at septic absorption fields here. And it'll tell you whether it thinks it's going to be limited or not. They also have a hydric soils layer, which could help you determine whether the area is going to have a high infiltration rate or not. So that would be under soil properties and qualities, soil qualities and features, hydrologic soil group. And this is a rating of A through D. A has very high infiltration rates. D has very slow infiltration rates. So that's another good measure. Can some soil have multiple scores? I think it's per soil type. So a parcel might have multiple scores, but I think each soil type is going to have one. All right, so this is what ChatGPT said about the Goldsboro sandy loam. Let's go back to the soil map. This one here, which is 54% of the area Goldsboro sandy loam. It says, I asked, would this soil be good for a septic system? Could it pass a perk? Short answer, maybe. Often moderate to severe for conventional septic because of wetness. It can pass in some spots, but the seasonal high water table is the make or break. Goldsboro series is a coastal plain soil that is moderately well drained. That means parts of the profile sit wet during the growing season. On gentle 0 to 3% slopes, the grade isn't the problem. Wetness usually is. And that is why under the sanitary facilities septic tank absorption fields layer, it has a limiting factor flagged. And you can see in that hydric soils layer I pulled up that the class for some of these soils is lower, so it has a slower infiltration rate. And the score of the Goldsboro sandy loam, let's go back to that. It's actually a 2. So you're right, we may have slightly conflicting information there. So what do you think, Abby, on that? The other thing is you can look up here the drainage class and the depth to water table, which are some other data points that could be useful. What does infiltration rate mean? That's just the rate at which the soil, water filters through the soil. Yeah, fancy words. I need to set my ChatGPT to 5th grade level English. So depth, but we can look at some other data points here. Depth to water table, soil properties and qualities, water features, depth to water table, and that can give you an estimate, potential estimate of how wet the area is going to be. Deeper the water table, maybe the less likely. What's directly related to soil perking then? So the hydrologic soil group. But I'm trying to give you some data points that might be useful, like drainage class I think would be a good one. This actually tells you how often, how well drained it is. But the direct septic related rating would be the septic tank absorption field, which was back here. waste manage, sanitary facilities, septic tank absorption field. These ratings, limited, very limited, unlimited things. So not limited is soil that has features very favorable. Good performance and very low maintenance can be expected. Somewhat limited indicates that the soil has features that are moderately favorable. Limitations can be overcome through design. Very limited, more features that are unfavorable. Limitations cannot be overcome without major reclamation, special design, etc. So this is most directly related to septic systems. And there are some soil properties that drive PERC outcomes. Like I was showing the depth to the water table, depth to bedrock, the hydrologic soils group, and the drainage class. Those all give you an estimate of how well. Okay, so yeah, I would say if you wanted to use this as a tool to kind of estimate whether it might be worth continuing, like purchasing a PERC test or just getting an estimate of how likely it is a PERC test would pass for a conventional system. This is all for a conventional system. There are other systems that can work in more challenging soils, but you could start with the septic tank absorption field, because that's the most direct data point here. And if you're getting a rating that is less than stellar, then maybe you can dive into some of these other metrics that get at how well water is draining through the soil, which is what the PERC test is measuring, right? So you can look at drainage class to see if it's well drained or moderately well drained. You can look at depth to bedrock, depth to water table. So the depth to water table is under water features here. The closer the water table to the surface, the more likely the soil is to be wet already, which means water isn't going to move through the soil. It's already full of water, right? So this is the depth in centimeters. So this one actually seems like it's the water table isn't that close to the surface. You can also look at the hydrologic soil, which hydrologic soil, that's like a fancy word, but basically hydrologic soils are wet soils, they're wetlands, right? So this tells you this rating is actually based on how well water is, I don't want to use the fancy word again, how well water is moving through the soil, with group A being soils that allow water to drain very well, and group D having very low water movement rate through the soil. So you're going to get a lot of water runoff. The soil's already close to full of water, right? So you can look at these ratings here. We were talking about Goldsboro. B is actually not bad. It's just below A. So some of these other metrics actually don't seem that bad, even though it was flagged under the septic absorption field layer as very limited. So, this might be one where you very well could have a PERC test pass if you take the aggregate of all these different fields. But if it's helpful, I think I'll put in the description all the different fields we talked about. Can the soil drain too fast? That might be bad for septic. Generally, I don't think that that's an issue, but I will check that. So if the soil is very sandy or gravelly, then pathogens and nutrients might not be removed as effectively, or nitrates can go straight into the groundwater. This would be flagged under the septic tank absorption field rating as rapid permeability or too coarse as the limiting factor. So that would actually be flagged under, again, that septic. Here, we'll go back to it. Septic tank absorption fields layer would flag that as well as a limiting factor. So you're right. Soil can drain too much. There is actually one other layer here, the saturated, this is more fancy words, which I know you don't like, saturated hydrologic conductivity. And that is another measure of how fast water drains through the soil. That is under soil properties and qualities, soil physical properties. You actually have to put in a top and bottom depth, use 0 to 100 centimeters. And it gives you a rating. So this is like how quickly in micrometers per second water is going to drain through the soil. Yeah, you want to continue. Actually, we're already well past time, so we can continue this. We can look at an example. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that tomorrow. We have a couple properties we did perk tests. They passed, so we can take 2, if we have time, maybe even 3, and see how each of these metrics compare. So you could see like whether if you were using this to try to estimate whether it was worth investing in the property, in a perk test for the property, and moving forward with it, how well these different metrics correlate with the final perk results. Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll do that tomorrow. But in the meantime, in the description, I'll list out each of these components that we were talking about specifically for the septic system, and then we can look at them on specific examples tomorrow. But since we're out of time, just for everyone else who might be viewing, we do have a free gift for showing up today. Oh, and I did have a fun fact. I almost forgot about that. We can look at some failed perk testing. I'm going to have to drag those up. They're buried in our archive folder. But yeah, we can look at some failed examples too. That would be good. Yeah, that'll be fun. Anyone who's nerdy about these things, that'll be fun. Okay, so just quick fun fact for today. Only about 5% of soil is organic matter, but that tiny fraction stores more carbon than all the world's plants and even the atmosphere. So the organic matter in the soil is the Earth's biggest carbon sink. Okay, okay, I'll fix the title, fair. But here is our free gift, 17 Simple Ways to Generate Income from Land. The link is in the description in the pinned comments. We do also have a coupon code that's live in C200 for $200 off any of our North Carolina properties. You can find all our properties at land.gocap.com. To use the coupon, just click buy or hold, and there'll be a coupon code line. The coupon code's valid until midnight, so whether you buy or hold, you can apply that and get $200 off. So tomorrow we'll be back to look at some more updates on properties, maybe announce our free land giveaway if we can get that out by the end of the day today. And also look at some examples of properties where we had perk tests done so we know the result and we see how those results compare to the soil survey metrics. So thank you everyone for joining, and we'll be back here tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern.